This is exactly why we need to ban stock trading amongst members of Congress. And I want to talk about the broader, deeper background of this individual, Senator Rick Scott of Florida. So we just found out this past week, because he disclosed this more than a year late, that he engaged in stock trades that were worth more than, get this, $26 million involved in companies that he legislated on or had some impact or had some knowledge about at least a general level. The unusual whales saying very unusual in their reporting there. Now, when you go back and you look at even Rick Scott's history, you'll find that he made his money working at a company or leading a company that was involved in the biggest Medicaid and Medicare fraud in history, that entered into both criminal and civil settlements, totaling close to $2 billion. So if you want to know where the fraud, waste, criminality comes from when it comes to Medicaid and Medicare, yeah, it's coming from people who are now leaders in the MAGA Republican Party, like Rick Scott. Now, Rick Scott recently testified to try to block legislation that would ban stock trading by members of Congress. Who would have thunk that these corrupt MAGAs are out there? And by the way, to me, anyone who's involved in this needs to cease and desist immediately from this behavior. It should be a bipartisan thing. But Rick Scott's one of the senators who have blocked the legislation to stop this stock trading by people like Rick Scott. And Rick Scott's like, who wants to be poor? I don't want to be poor. Why are we attacking people with money? We should love the people who are really rich. That's who we should be protecting. Watch him say this verbatim in the past few weeks. And now we've learned about those stock trades. Here, play this clip.
I own operating businesses, but somehow it's suspect because I made money. I don't know how many people in the audience, how many of you don't want to make money? Anybody want to be poor? I don't. Right? So this idea that we're going to attack people because they make money is wrong. Is absolutely wrong. We should cherish all of our different backgrounds. Every one of us has a different background. I've got a business background. But what I was just accused of is making money, and somehow I can't be fair and do things the right way.
Now, I'll give you just some background before showing you some video about him, but let me show you, just read the Department of Justice press release from Thursday, June 26, 2003, about Rick Scott's company. HCA, formerly known as Columbia, has agreed to pay the United States $631 million in civil penalties and damages arising from false claims the government alleged it submitted to Medicare and other federal health programs. The Justice Department announced today. This settlement marks the conclusion of the most comprehensive healthcare fraud investigation ever undertaken by the DOJ, the Department of Health and Human Services, the Office of Personnel Management, and states. The settlement announced today resolved HCA's civil liability for false claims resulting from a variety of allegedly unlawful practices, including cost report fraud and the payment of kickbacks to physicians. Previously, on December 14, 2000, HCA subsidiaries pled guilty to substantial criminal conduct and paid more than $850 million in criminal fees, civil restitution, and penalties, combined with today's separate administrative settlement with the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, under which HCA will pay an additional $250 million to resolve overpayment claims arising from certain of its cost reporting practices. The government will have recovered $1.7 billion from Rick Scott's company, HCA, by far the largest recovery ever reached by the government in a healthcare fraud investigation. Now, Rick Scott walked off with over, 200 or $300 million from this company. So he personally made a fortune. He parlayed that into a criminal career. Let me show you this video of when FBI and DOJ were conducting their investigation and went into the facilities, just so you can see it for yourself. Let's play this clip.
It is one of the biggest criminal investigations of an American corporation ever.
We're executing a search warrant.
In the past few months, hundreds of federal agents have raided at least 70 of Columbia's hospitals and offices in 7 states.
Rick Scott promised explosive growth to shareholders, but to insiders, Rick Scott could be ruthless.
They seem to care more about profits than medicine.
Good old-fashioned fraud, lying for money.
Over the last decade, Columbia has made its stockholders and executives rich.
The company cheated the Medicare program, and they knew what they were doing.
Regularly filing false Medicare reports and overcharging the government.
Charging the government for everything from Kentucky Derby tickets to country club memberships.
False claims submitted to the government year after year over the course of hundreds of hospitals. Their promotions depended on it. Their bonuses depended on it.
For-profit hospital chain HCA, formerly called Columbia HCA, will plead guilty to criminal conduct.
$745 million to settle charges of fraud in Medicare billing.
Rick Scott and 5 other top corporate executives have resigned. And federal investigators told ABC News today that Scott is now considered a prime target of the investigation.
Now let's bring in Harry Litman. Now, Harry runs Talking Feds YouTube, Talking Feds Substack, Talking Feds podcast, which you should subscribe to. But Harry, these are the types of cases also that you handle. I mean, when you're not a law professor, podcaster, host, you handle these Ketam false claim cases and have a real sense of the way these types of cases go down. And look, I want to talk about the fact also that right now, too, Donald Trump has so gutted all of these agencies that would be doing the investigations today that the reality is that we're going to need to rely on people like you and these law firms that are doing the private attorney general stuff to be able to uncover it, because there's been a total capitulation by the Trump regime. No more, like the SEC is not doing enforcement. Do you think really Department of Medicaid and Medicare Services are conducting investigations of companies like this? Oh, maybe, but all they got to do is give a donation to Donald Trump and they shut it down. Harry, what do you make of all of this?
Yeah, look, it's super interesting. These are not the kinds of cases. This very case, which was the biggest healthcare recovery fraud ever. It was the firm that I was working with, and I do still work with a firm, Whistleblower Partners, that I think are the best False Claims Act lawyers in the country. But people don't know that much about the False Claims Act. It's recovered over $70 billion for federal taxpayers, 2 to 5 every year, and really it's so much reliant on whistleblowers. So you'll have, it's stunning as you work on these big cases, the amount of fraud that takes place inside big companies. They'd never be able to find it without whistleblowers, and whistleblowers often find themselves sort of in hot water and they're treated a certain way, but then they come forward, find a whistleblower lawyer, and everything kinds of can change. It's, they can be long roads, but really, very much you can sort of turn the tables on fraud. And this was one. It was a big one at the time, the biggest, maybe still the biggest in healthcare. And I've worked on other ones. Remember Trump's for-profit college? There's fraud against the government there, and I had the biggest for-profit college case today that's ever been brought. But it's this really discrete area, and it gives the possibility to do the right thing, and it can be a bit of a lonely road to actually blow the whistle. But then you're working with the Department of Justice, working with the fraud section. You're on the good guys' side. That's one of the reasons I chose to do it, having come from government. It was a natural alliance. So A, this stuff happens, and B, it's just amazing the kind of brazenness and often stupidity. Scott was making the money, as it were, but often there'll be things that's just a middle manager under pressure, but they defraud the government. Basically, this happens when you make a promise or representation of the government and you lie about it. Taxpayers would foot the bill, but this defense fraud, healthcare fraud, it's really endemic across the government. So I'm familiar with this in particular, I just got to agree with where you started, though. It's permissible to do all these things with companies that you have some role in legislating. You just have to reveal it. That's a pretty small matter. What took over a year here, and just in a perfect world, you wouldn't have any of this. Judges aren't allowed to, well, except the U.S. Supreme Court, which does what it wants. But you can't have stock in a case with a company who's in front of you, whatever. So it really does permit, as Rick Scott says, what's wrong with getting rich. I think it's pretty clear what's wrong in these sorts of instances, and I don't know what his story is going to be for a little over a year delay. But when these things come out, even permissibly, I'm always thinking in terms of it's not the best way to run the government, and even with those fairly low threshold rules, people still breaking them, making a lot of money with companies that they're involved in and their legislative duties. It's just whether or not illegal, it's kind of unsavory.
I remember when I showed that clip a few weeks back of Rick Scott saying we need to, allow people to. He's very pro senators and Congress member stock trading, and now to hear $26 million. And I just think of Americans right now. I just saw a recent poll, Americans ranking, how do you feel about the economy? Only 22% said that the economy is doing good right now. And everyone else said poor or fair. But people, you could have Rick Scott and Donald Trump and the Mar-a-Lago crew say inflation's gone, gas prices have never been lower, everybody's doing fantastic out there. But that's not what's happening out there. And, it is not shocking why politicians who are running authentically on issues of affordability, getting rid of this stock trading stuff, and saying that billionaires and millionaires need to let's start with paying their fair share, and let's talk about dealing with systemic issues about why in this disastrous budget bill are poor and low income people having their money transferred to the billionaires and the biggest transfer of wealth. It makes no sense, and it does make a lot of sense why people who are standing up for the 99% authentically and not being phony about it are right now positioning themselves in ways that I think are important, not just to win elections, but hopefully to make things better for the people, because it's just screwed up watching stuff like this, Harry.
Yeah, no, it's really true. I just want to make this final point, because these cases tend to be enormous, and that means individual whistleblowers can make very large recoveries. And you think about the fraud is technically against the taxpayers, the fisc. But so often this kind of fraud, what you're talking about, there would be problems if everything were on the up and up. But when it isn't, there are victims, and they tend to be patients who don't get what they need, or who get off-label medicine, or students who are promised great educations and then get left holding the bag with nothing. In other words, behind these big defrauding of government stories are thousands potentially of just wrecked lives because of the fraud. And that's what makes the area of law, where I can, I still like to do it, because it can be satisfying in the way that government work is satisfying.
Well, I'll say this, and in addition to everybody subscribing to Harry Litman's YouTube channel, Talking Fed, subscribe now. His Substack, subscribe now. His podcast called Talking Fed, subscribe now. If you're a whistleblower, you can reach out to me. Reach out to me if you're a whistleblower. Ben at MeidasTouch.com if you're a whistleblower in one of these types of cases. I'm not sure what I'll be able to do, or if I'll be able to do anything. But if you're a whistleblower, send me Ben at MeidasTouch.com. I'll take a look at it. Put the subject headline, whistleblower response to Ben and Harry interview. Make that your subject. I'm a whistleblower response to have Ben and Harry. This way I see it, because I get thousands of emails every day. Put it in all caps. and send me an email. I'll take it. I'm not sure what I can do about it, but send me an email and we'll go from there. Harry Litman.
Just what you need, a little bit, a whole nother cottage industry. It's true. And also I and my colleagues, a dozen of the best guys in the business. So if we can, if there's a good case out there, we'll try
I'll show it to you. I'll show it to you, Harry, if we get it. Everybody hit subscribe. Let's get to 6 million. Thank you.
See you later.
The truth is more important than ever. Check out our new Truth Over Lies collection at store.MeidasTouch.com. All 100% USA union made.